Hello again and welcome to another 140 game Imperial Guard Tactics video, and before we get into today's video I would like to say a huge thank you to Eric Cruzat for sending in some awesome pictures of his Imperial Guard collection. 16k points, absolutely fantastic. This is dedication to the Emperor made manifest. Your collection easily rivals, if not exceeds, my own Eric, so you're an absolute madman and a legend. Thank you for sending these pictures in. If anyone else has got any cool pictures that they want me to use in my videos, hell, if you want to send in some of your full collection pictures like Eric has, please post them on my Facebook page, or you can email them to me at mordianglorytv@gmail.com. And don't worry if you're an Ogre who hasn't had his bonehead surgery yet, because there will be links down and in the description below. So without further ado, let's crack on with today's video. So today, guys, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be doing a lightning fast review of every single unit in the Imperial Guard Codex as it stands right now in the later parts of 9th edition. So I'm literally going to be starting with the HQs. I'm going to be working my way through all the way to the final unit in the Codex. I've got my Codex in front of me right now. You will hear me flipping the pages as we go along. I'm going to keep it real, unedited, and let's just do this. One take and done. And I'm not going to be going into a deep dive of each unit. I'm literally going to go, here's the unit, here's why I think it's good, bad, or ugly, and a quick justification for why I think that is the case. So, 3, 2, 1, let's go. First unit, Lord Castling Creed, special character for the Cadians. Absolutely fantastic unit if you are running a Cadian force. He will set you back about 60 odd points. He can do 3 orders, and that's pretty much one of the best things about him. There is an argument that you can get some extra command points for him, which is pretty good. Now, he used to be really good up until the latest balance patch. Now, the reason he used to be really good is because he had a 12-inch order bubble. But now that's not so important because of the fact that everyone gets free Voxcasters. So I would put this guy as a decent unit, but certainly not a mandatory one anymore. Next unit, Company Commander. Absolutely mandatory, awesome, fantastic unit. One of the best units you must have in your army. Top tier. Very cheap source of orders. Can do 2 orders in a 6-inch radius, but basically it's in an 18-inch radius now thanks to all the free Voxcasters. Cannot say enough good things about this guy. He's not a combat unit, he's a buff unit. Absolutely fantastic, great unit. Take Company Commanders. Tank Commanders. As I stand right now, 9th edition, Tank Commanders are another top tier fantastic unit that you must be including in your competitive Imperial Guard armies. If you're not taking Tank Commanders, you are fighting with one hand tied behind your back. Preferred loadouts for pretty much any situation include the Demolisher Cannon, the Battle Cannon, and the Executioner Plasma Cannon. In that order is how good they are. Demolisher Cannon should be your standard go-to. If you want to put sponsors on them, that's up to you. It'll depend on what sponsors you want to put on them, depending on what other units are in your army. But long story short, you want to be taking Demolisher Tank Commanders, as many as you can squeeze into your army. They're absolutely fantastic. Honourable mention goes that to you may want to take, if you're running a Caden army, Gatekeeper, Battle Cannon, because that's absolutely fantastic. You can't go wrong with a Tank Commander putting out flat 3 damage. Moving on, Knight Commander Pask. Knight Commander Pask was a really powerful mandatory unit and is still very good in an Acadian army, but the problem is he's kind of pricey now, and the way things are in the current Guard Codex, we're having to squeeze every point anyway. So he is certainly very good if you are collecting a Cadian army, which you probably should be if you're going for a competitive army in the late stage of 9th edition. But he is not a mandatory unit. He is a nice to have, but he is very good. So take him if you want to. There we go. Next unit, Commissar Yarrick. Sadly, the old man is not a competitive unit in my opinion. By the way, please feel free to disagree with any of the suggestions, that any of my opinions that I've got so far. But I would say that Commissar Yarrick is not a mandatory unit. He's expensive. He's 105 points or 100-ish points, whatever he is these days. And he's okay, but you know, Commissars in general are a bit rubbish. The main reason you take him is Hero of Hades High, so you can get reroll 1s for friendly Astra Militarum units within 6 inches of him. That is in combat as well. But to be honest, guys, Imperial Guard have got access to loads of sources of real ones, so I don't know why you settle on one dude that can do it when you can just pick Cadians and then get reroll 1s pretty much inbuilt anyway. So he's not mandatory anymore. So absolutely amazing model, but not mandatory. Next one, Lord Commissar, pretty much not needed anymore. Beginning of 8th edition, these guys were fantastic. As we find ourselves in 9th edition now, not really worth it. Helpful for filling out an extra attachment if you're taking Scions, but with the upcoming CP changes that are being rumoured, probably not going to be used anymore. Sadly, Lord Commissars are not a good unit. You may find that you can make them work, but they're certainly not mandatory for a competitive Imperial Guard list. Next unit, Colonel Ironhand Strachan, absolute beast, absolute legend, fantastically cool unit. Really good way of, if you're running a Catachan combat army, if you're running a combat army, Catachans are basically the only real way of doing it these days. And if you're going to do that, you need Iron Hand Strachan. However, if you're not running a combat army, which is probably the right thing to do because combat and field guard armies aren't that great, then I would not recommend taking Iron Hand Strachan. He's not that good. He's quite expensive for what you get. Basically, he's a souped up company commander. So why wouldn't you just take a company commander? There we go. Next one, Tempesta Prime. Tempesta Primes are really, really good if you're running Scions. If you're not running Scions, then I probably wouldn't bother with them. It's simple as that. They're basically company commanders for Scions. They're kind of expensive. One thing you've got to be aware of is they do get a 4+ regular save, but they don't get an invulnerable save, which is really, really bad, which means they're actually really, really squishy. Overall, if you're running Scions, absolute must-have. If you're not running Scions, you probably don't need them. You're just going to be taking a couple of units of Scions to get some engagement fronts and RND. Moving on to the next unit, we now have the Primaris Psyker. This is the last of the HQ choices, and Primaris Psykers are decidedly okay. If you're needing a 4th HQ choice for some reason, let's say you're running 2 battalions or something, Primaris Psykers are not a bad choice to go for, but why would you take a Primaris Psyker when you can take an astropath who is cheaper and will do what you want to do anyway, which is psychic actions and will remove cover and all that kind of stuff. Primaris Psykers, solid middle tier for me. I've never been a big fan of them, but I do acknowledge that they can be quite useful. Now on to the infantry troop choice sections. We're looking at infantry squads. Absolute top tier, A tier, mandatory unit. You must be taking infantry squads in your army. If you're not taking infantry squads, then you're going to have a bad time. They aren't particularly powerful, they aren't particularly durable, they aren't particularly anything, to be honest, but what they are is a really good, cheap troop choice. So either you're going to spam loads and loads and loads of these because you're taking a pure infantry army, or you're going to take a few of these as attacks, or you're going to take some of these in a mechanized force, but you need infantry squads. They're obsec, they can do actions, they can hold territory, they can go in the attack, they can go in the defense. Can't say enough good things about infantry squad. If you're not running infantry squads in your guard army, why are you even collecting guard? Top tier mandatory unit in my opinion. Conscripts. Absolutely fantastic unit, has had a massive roller coaster of a ride over the course of 8th and 9th edition, but I would say absolutely fantastic unit, just good for bodies. Now, even if you're not running Cadians, you still want to be considering conscripts. 150 points, 30 bodies, stick that on objective, the opponent's going to have a little bit of time digging them out of cover, they're not going to want to do it. Absolutely love conscripts, don't underestimate them, they are really, really good. Moving on to the last of the troop choices. That's right, we only get 3 troop choices in the guard. We've got Militarians plus Scions. Again, absolutely fantastic choice. All of the infantry selections in the guard are a really, really strong part of our army. Scions can deep strike, they've got durability, they've got firepower, they've got everything you could possibly want. The only thing is that they don't get your normal regiment traits. So if you're taking them in a regular guard force, then they're not going to benefit from a regiment. But if you're taking them in your regular guard force, you could use them for some cheap line breakers, some cheap engagement fronts, some cheap RND. They're just cheap, great objective capping units. And if you're taking a pure Scion army, then you absolutely need these boys. Glory boys, great unit. Absolutely fantastic. Shouldn't be leaving home without them. So now we move on to the elite section of the army. This is where things start getting a bit interesting now. The Imperial Guard elite section is very, very crowded. So we're going to start off with the Master of Ordnance, who is not a very good unit. Now, some people will be very upset with me for saying this because people tend to have a bit of a soft spot for Master of Ordnance. I have a soft spot for Master of Ordnance, but he basically can't do his intended role anymore, which is to support artillery. He has one key rule, Master of Ballistics, which basically means if basilisks, wyverns, or manticores or death strikes are within 6 inches of this model and they target a unit that's over 36 inches away, they get reroll 1s to hit. Why would you take that? Why wouldn't you just take Cadians and you get inbuilt reroll 1s to hit, regardless of how far away you are? I recently ran a Master of Ordnance in a non-Cadian army just to see how shit he was. He's truly awful. He was never anything that the big gunshot would never less than 36 inches away. So we're never over 36 inches away. So total waste time. The only reason you take him is for his weapon, which is the artillery barrage, which means he can basically be like a little 35.1 shot basilisk, but not really worth it, especially when you're going to spend a CP on it to make it worth a damn. So sadly, Massive Ordnance, very, very cool unit, but not really very good at this point in 9th edition. Platoon commanders, absolutely fantastic unit. If you, for some reason, decided you don't want to be taking company commanders, then you must be taking platoon commanders. There is a valid reason for not taking company commanders. You might have filled up all your HQ slots with tank commanders, which makes perfect sense. If you have done that, then you're going to want platoon commanders. Cheap discount company commanders who don't take up an HQ slot and can do one order a turn, absolutely fantastic, must-have unit in your army if you're not running company commanders. If you are running them, you probably don't need platoon commanders. Next unit, command squads, absolutely fantastic unit. You can run these bare bones, they can run around capping objectives, raising flags, and just generally having a good time, or you can use them as a very, very concentrated source of firepower. You get 4 veterans, which means you get 3+ blitz skill. You can put 4 special weapons in there. They can jump out of a Chimera and they can blow stuff up. 4 melter guns, 4 plasma guns. Absolutely fantastic unit. Can't go wrong with the command squad. Not mandatory by any means, but still a fantastic unit. Not one to overlook. Colour Sergeant Kell, RIP, he died in the Fall of Acadia, but he's still in this book. He probably won't be in the next codex, which will be a big sad. But he is not a mandatory unit. He's basically a little cool unit you can take alongside Creed, or you can take him independently if you want to. Units within Acadian units within 6 inches can reroll failed morale tests. You can do extra orders, blah 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 blah. Basically, fluffy choice is not really needed. Next, we've got special weapon squads. Basically, do you want a ship version of the command squad? There you go. Take the special weapon squad. It is a ship version. It is not worth it. They do not hit as well. Just take command squads if you're going to be taking special weapons in a concentrated form. If you had to choose between special weapons and command squads, fill out your command squads first, and then if you decide that you want to hate yourself, take special weapon squads. Overall, not very good. Veteran squads, similar sort of thing. Special weapon squads, really. You're paying more points to get more bodies. They're like a more durable version of a command squad, essentially. But at the end of the day, you will be running around and paying points for a load of people with rifles, and really, veterans want to be special weapon toting boys. So yeah, veterans are kind of okay. They're solid B tier, C tier sort of unit in the codex. Not too bad, but you can find better ones anyway. Command squads are kind of the top tier, followed by veterans, followed by special weapon squads in terms of special weapon caddies. Next unit, we've got Sgt Hakka. Pretty much mandatory if you're running a Catachan force. Everyone within 6 inches of him, if they're a Catachan, can reroll ones to hit in the shooting phase. Otherwise, he doesn't really do much. He's just a big chungus running around with a heavy bolter. He's apparently strength 4, strength 5 or something, I don't know. But yeah, you take him for the reroll ones. So basically, if you want to take Catachan but then also live your best Acadian life, then take Sgt Hakka. Military Best Command Squad, basically see what I said about Command Squad, except for now they can deep strike, a little bit more pricey. But yeah, overall fantastic unit. Not mandatory if you're running regular guard, absolutely mandatory if you're running pure science, because you need to be able to drop in 4 melter guns that say bye-bye to an enemy unit. Minister and Priest, very, very cool unit, absolutely essential if you're running a combat guard army, but combat guard armies aren't top tier at all, so probably not a good choice in general. Minister and Priests are good for if you want to give an extra attack to everyone within 6 inches. Now, why would you want to do that? Regular guards and close combat kind of dog shit? Well, if you're taking Crusaders, you're taking bulgarians, you're taking ogres, you're taking any sort of combat army, if you combine it with Strachan so you can get +2 attacks to everyone around them, then it kind of works, but otherwise Minister and Priests are certainly not a mandatory unit. They're solid, okay unit, nice to have. Crusaders, if you're deciding you would like to chop people up in close combat, Crusaders are probably the way to go. Nice and cheap, power sword, storm shield, can't really go wrong. They have the old active faith ability, which allows them to basically jank around the board doing shit they shouldn't be allowed to do. So this is a battle. Wish they had our Crusaders, because our Crusaders are better than theirs. Lol, 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 screw you, it's just a battle. Moving on to the next one. Tech Priest Engines here. Nice, fluffy unit. Cog Boys wish they had our Tech Priest Engines here. It's probably not. They're not. They're basically the same as what you get in the Tech Priest book. They're pretty good. Only unit in the Guard Army that gets power armor, which is kind of nice. They are a mandatory toughness 4, strength 4, and 4 wounds. People always forget that. People assume they're strength 3, toughness 3, 3 wounds. They're not. They're actually probably one of the most durable guard characters we have at the moment. And basically, they're nice to have if you're taking lots of armor. Now, I run a Steel Legion army. I always run a Tech Priest in that army, and he does a bit because he can heal D3 wounds turn. But he's certainly by no means mandatory. He's just kind of nice to have if running a lot of armor. Services, total dog shit, don't bother with them, not I'm going to cover them. Regular Commissar, they're not good. There you go. Commissar's totally diddled over by the old nerf bat that happened at the beginning of 8th edition. Can be kind of good for having a cheap character. If you want the absolute cheapest character in the book, I think a regular Commissar is 15 points and that's it. So he might do something for you if you really want a 15-point character. But basically, Assassinate Bait, basically not really doing much for you. Morale means bugger all in 9th edition. Moving on, Officer of the Fleet. Nice, cool unit. Can call in some mortal wounds. It's always good to have a source of mortal wounds in your army. And he is actually really good if you're running a couple of Valkyries or other flyers. Because if you have an enemy model within 18 inches of this model, then any units within range of it can get some reroll ones to hit. So basically, it gives you some reroll ones for your flyers. Now, bear in mind, flyers do not normally get regiment traits, which means they don't normally have very many access to rerolls. It's absolutely fantastic to have the Officer of the Fleet. Not a mandatory choice at all. Certainly a nice choice. But if you're running flyers, why the hell wouldn't you take an Officer of the Fleet? Solid, sort of OK B tier, C tier, middle tier sort of unit. Wyvern Psychers, big bag of dog shit, probably one of the biggest meme units in the Codex. They can be good if you're willing to sink CP into them. I'm not willing to sink CP into them. I think they're shit. I wouldn't even consider them. Astropath, absolutely fantastic unit, other end of the spectrum. Basically a budget Premier Psyker, but you absolutely get what you want from this budget unit. Basically the main reason you're taking this is the fact that you can do a psychic power turn. The main reason you do psychic powers is you want to be doing psychic actions, or you want to be doing Night Shroud and Psychic Barrier. But the main reason why this model totally and utterly outshines the Premier Psyker is because of his ability, Astral Divination. Basically allows you to remove cover from an enemy unit that's within 18 inches of the Psyker, which is absolutely fantastic, and then everyone just dogpiles that unit and kills it. Bear in mind, you will have to be within 6 inches of the Psyker to get that benefit, but still, Astral Divination, absolutely fantastic. Ogre Bodyguard, bit of a meme unit, can be good. Have heard recently that if you take 3 of them and then just basically use them to beat the shit out of the enemy, that they're actually quite good. But overall, I'd say they are a solid, okay, nice to have unit. People tend to take them when they're making sort of fluffy lists, and they tend to always do okay. But I mean, overall, there are some fantastic builds for Ogre Bodyguards, but I would not put them as an A tier unit. I'd put them as a either rubbish or okay tier unit. Depends on how you want to run them. You really have to make them work if you're going to make them work. Ogrins, they're worse versions of Bulgarians. Bulgarians aren't very good at the moment, so Ogrins are terrible at the moment. The one thing you do have with those, they are 25 points per model. For your 25 points, you get 3 wounds at toughness 5, but you've still only got a 5% armor save, so you're just going to die very, very quickly. Only thing to mention is that they are pretty cheap muscle. 25 points, if you have a priest near them, and when they charge, you'll have 5 attacks per model. They hit on 3s, strength 5, but the problem is they're only AP 1, and they're, so yeah, they're a bit rubbish. Bulgarians, once premier unit of the Guard Codex, now a bit rubbish. Problem they're a bit the reason they're a bit rubbish is because Armour of Contempt basically removes their AP, and the fact that everyone and their mum is running around with reduced damage by 1 at the moment means that the fact they do 2 damage means that they're rubbish, which means actually, in terms of damage output, they're basically no better than Ogrins. The reason you're taking them is because they can get easy access to 2+ saves and easy access to 4+ vulnerable saves. I imagine if you took a big block of Ogrin, / Bulgarin, sorry, and took them all with the vulnerable save shields and then put Psychic Barrier on them, having a big unit of muscle walking around with a 3% vulnerable save would be really annoying for opponents to deal with. That's kind of their last reason for taking them now. Bulgarins, once premier, now mid-tier. Not Deck Dog, do you want a named character for an Ogre Bodyguard? Basically that's it, see my previous entry. Ratlings, total shit, sadly. Snipers are already a bit rubbish. They can shoot and move, but they can't do it from Overwatch. They do get a 2+ save when they're in cover, but they start with a 6 up armor save, so basically they're just as durable as every other guard unit, so why did they even bother that rule? I don't know. They can infiltrate forward, but they've got to stay 18 inches away from enemy models in the current 9th edition small boards, basically means they can't infiltrate forward, so total dogshit unit. Hellhounds, once an absolutely premier top tier guard unit, now sadly relegated to the sin bin, not very good. Problem is that they're AP 1, Armour Contempt wipes them out. Problem is that they don't do enough damage for the points. I mean, there is some play with the Devil Dog, but the Bane Wolf is terrible. The Hellhound's there, and the Devil Dog is, well, TBC if they're any good. So overall, they're alright, but Guard has plenty of the better armour options. Moving on to other units. For the fast attack section, we've got Scout Sentinels and Armed Sentinels. Basically, Scout Sentinels are there if you want to make Grey Knight players and Thousand players cry and quit and not want to play the game anymore because they can't just teleport all the units into your face turn 1. Scout Sentinels are one of those units where if you take them to a tournament, 4 out of 5 games they're not going to do anything. Suddenly you're going to come across a Grey Knight player who you're then just going to dunk because he just can't do what you can't get up close and personal with you and it's just really frustrating for him. So Scout Sentinels are kind of cool. Armed Sentinels, a little bit of a hidden gem, very cheap. Weapons platform. I love them. They're not the best unit in the Codex, but they are weirdly durable. They have stratagems like half the damage and all this kind of crazy stuff, and they're okay. If you take one of them, put a missile launcher on it, put a hunter killer missile on it, you'll set yourself back like 50 points, and you can use a stratagem to basically get +2 to hit with them, which is pretty nice, although it does cap out +1 to hit thanks to 9th edition. Moving on to the heavy weapon selection. We start off very, very strong with heavy weapon squads. Heavy weapon squads have always been okay. The thing is, you never ever want to take them with things that like las cannons or autocannons or missile launchers or anything like that because they're very, very squishy. It's essentially 6 guardsmen. But the reason why you take them is because you take mortars. Mortars have always been good to game-breakingly brokenly good. So just take mortars. Mortars are great. And this is the case from like all across the edition. So when it's a heavy weapon squad, what it really means is mortar squad. Take them, love them, take them as Cajun, get full rerolls, blast the Elder off the board, make the Elder cry. What can you do? Well, how can you have a better time? You can't. Basilisk. Big penis gun. Pretty good. Overall, Was outshined by the Manticore for a long time, now making a bit of a triumphant return. Recently used a couple of basilisks, found them to be totally solid, reliable units. Solidly got through 2 sort of wounds a turn. Kind of starting to claw the way back against Manticores, simply because they've got better AP and they're 30 points cheaper. And the fact that they've got better AP really makes a difference in a world of Armour of Contempt. Moving on, wyverns. Some people love them, some people hate them. Bit of a Marmite unit, in my opinion. They are okay, but why wouldn't you just take more? Why wouldn't you just take mortar squads? There you go. They're okay, but like, yeah, that's it. Moving on, Hydras, absolute meme unit, 4 big autocannons, can be quite good at countering units with a lot of fly. At one point there was a debate whether they'd be good for countering Dark Elder, but it turned out Dark Elder were just that broken that even a unit that was literally specifically designed to kill them, like the Hydra, couldn't kill them. So Hydras have always been a bit of a fun unit, a bit of a meme unit. Right now they have -1 to hit when they're not shooting something with fly. I imagine it's going to go away in the Codex, but at the moment they're a bit of a shit unit, wouldn't bother taking them. Manticores, once the golden child of the Guard Codex, thanks to the ability to take full payload and have 12, potentially 12 flat damage 3 shots. Now, still perfectly okay, but with the advent of dense terrain being everywhere and the fact that Armour of Contempt is pretty much everywhere, yeah, not as good anymore. Still, absolutely solid unit, but no longer an A+++ tier, S tier unit, now probably a B to A tier unit. Death Strike Missile, pretty good. I'm joking. Absolutely fucking awful unit. Probably the worst unit in the whole Codex. Do not bother with them. GW could literally make them 30 points and you still wouldn't take them, because then they'd be taking up a valuable slot in this new CP-less world that we live in. Don't take Death Strikes. Absolute meme unit. Total joke. Just forget it easy even in the Codex. Moving on to Lemus Battle Tank. Lemus Battle Tank is a very tough unit. Pretty good. Problem with them is that why wouldn't you just take tank commanders? Now, if the rumour changes happen where guard tank commanders are going to be 1 per detachment, which means we might only be taking 1 or 2 in a whole army, then the Lemus Battle Tank might get better by default. But right now, there's no real point in taking the basically in rush. You might as well just take 3 tank commanders because you don't really need more than 3 or 4 Lemuses anyway. Moving on. Chimera, dedicated transport, probably one of the best dedicated transports in the entire game. Currently got a new lease on life thanks to Hammer of the Emperor. Currently got a bit of a new lease on life thanks to the fact that everyone and their mum is running around with infantry shredding weapons out their wazoo. So I like Chimeras, I've always been a big fan of them. Metal box transporting your blokes around, comes with a shitload of guns. Why wouldn't you take one? The only disadvantage is it hits on 4s, but you don't really care. Taurox, the red-headed stepchild of the dedicated transport section. No, people don't like them. I mean, some people will, some weird people who like, you know, also like the film The Last Jedi who like Tauroxes. But apart from that, I wouldn't bother with them. Bit of a dog shit unit. Why wouldn't you just take a Chimera? It's less durable and it's got less firepower than a Chimera and costs more points, so that makes sense. On the total opposite end of the spectrum, if Taurox primed, the dedicated transport for the Sounds, absolutely fantastic A-tier unit. They can spaff out loads of shots. Just run them with the Gatling gun and the volley guns. That's always been the best way of running them. Your Scions run the heavy weapons. Your Tauroxes run the scything horde weapons. Just run them that way. I'm sick of the debate. Just do it. Moving on, Valkyries. Pretty good flyer, probably one of the better flyers in the game. It can transport some stuff, it can shoot some stuff. It's a flying tank. It's got 14 wounds, it's toughness 7, it's -1 to hit. You can spend a CP on it to make it -1 to hit even if it's hovering. Overall, fantastic unit. Once a bit of a troll unit for letting bulgarian jump out the back with parachutes. Now people don't really do that anymore. Moving on to the super heavy part of the book, bit of the book that makes me want to cry my eyes out because it's basically, it's beautiful, but it's just like a tragic painting. It's just that all the units are terrible. We have the super heavy part of the book. Baneblade, the Lehman Russ battle cannon of the super heavies for the guard. Take all comers, absolutely sort of monstrous unit, but it's not very good. Sadly, in fact, all of the super heavies are not very good. If you had to take a super heavy, you probably should take the Baneblade. It's a bit of a take all comers, but yeah, sadly, it's got less armor than a Lehman Russ, and it has no invulnerable save, and it has only 2 more wounds than an Imperial Knight. Yet costs more than pretty much any Imperial Knight that I can think of. So why would you take a Baneblade? You wouldn't. Banehammer, basically just not as good. It's got a tremor cannon. It's one thing about the tremor cannon is that it's basically not going to do damage, but if you hit the enemy, then you halve their movement and they can't advance. So it can weirdly like screw with people, but overall, it can transport people though, which is kind of cool. So bear in mind that 10 of those models can shoot out the top of it. Bane Sword, I don't think I've ever seen anyone run one. It's basically like a budget shadow sword. Yeah, it doesn't have a firing deck. it doesn't have the, it's just not very good, so ignore it. Doomhammer. Doomhammer has a magma cannon. It's pretty cool, but again, all the super heavies are a bit shit. They've all got the same stats. They're all going to die very, very quickly. It does have a firing deck at least, so you can make it work that way. But if you're going to take it in the fire deck, you'll just take the Stormlord, which we'll get to in a moment. The magma cannon is like heavy 2d6 strength, 10 AP -5, d6 damage. If the target is in half range, its weapon roll 2 dice and inflict the damage with it, and discard the lowest result. It's basically like a big Vanquish cannon, but Vanquish cannons are shit, so why do you take a big Doomhammer? I don't know, you have to be mad. Hellhammer, the sort of chody cousin of the Baneblade, one of the other take-all-comer choices. Basically, it's got an absolute meme gun because it has AP -4 and ignores cover, so it's kind of like AP -5. But there's nothing in the game that's ever going to really care about that. So basically, it's always going to put people onto their invulnerable state, which is kind of nice. But it is also probably the most expensive variant. And why would you take a really, really expensive shit unit? I don't know why you would. Shadow Sword, the ultimate in big penis guns, designed for taking out Titans. One of the better and more usable super heavies. Alongside the Baneblade, I would say it's one of the sort of ones you'll find most commonly featured. It gets +1 to hit when shooting at Titanic units. Imperial Knights are out and Chaos Knights are coming out, or they are already, I don't even friggin' know anymore. So yeah, these guys are pretty, if you want to kill some Titans, take a Shadow Sword. But if the Titans go first, your Shadow Sword's probably going to die, so that'll be sad. Stormlord. Big meme unit, basically let's take a super heavy, let's make it a giant transport, let's stick loads and loads of guns on it, and then let's still keep it ballistic skill 4+ so it never actually hits anything with those guns. Bit of a meme unit, like I said. Vulcan Mega Bolter used to be firing like 40 shots a turn, now it only fires 20, so big sad. It is AP 2 at least, it's strength 6 at least, but and it's damage 2, so it's okay, it'll kind of shred Marines, but you've got better sources for shredding Marines than a friggin' Stormlord. Storm Sword, I don't even know what it does. Basically a waste of time. 36 inch range, heavy 2d6, strength 10, 84, deals damage, shoot out with this weapon, do not gain the saving throws for being covered. Reroll damage rolls of 1 for this weapon. No, just don't bother with it. And that is it. That is all of the Imperial Guard units with a lightning fast summary done in one video. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have enjoyed it, please consider giving it a like and a subscribe. And if you've really enjoyed the video and you want to see me do more of these lightning fast reviews for other factions, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron supporter. It's thanks to the generous support of my channel members and my patron supporters that I'm able to keep the Morning Glory channel going and even improve upon some of the stuff that I do. So massive thank you to the channel supporters, massive thank you to the patron supporters. It just goes such a long way. You guys know how valuable you are. If you're interested in becoming a channel member, then please click on the join button next to the subscribe button on this video. It's down below, it's next to the big red one, it's a little blue one. And if you want to become a Patreon supporter, then please head on over to the Patreon page. There is a link down in the description below. Now I want to say a huge thank you to my current top tier Patreon supporters. I want to say thank you to John Stubbs, August Varney, Shooter McGavin and Swordfish Thumbs for all being subscribed at the Commissar level or the Lord General level or above. It's thanks to these guys who are absolutely amazingly generous that the Morning Glory channel is just going from strength to strength and is growing and it's just becoming a fantastic channel. So thank you guys. You know how much I value. You're getting a shout out every single video. And if anyone else wants to subscribe at the Commissar or Lord General level and wants to get a shout out every single video, then please consider heading on over to the Patreon page. Massive thank you to you guys. And of course, I hope everyone's enjoyed the video. And of course, I'll see you guys next time.